Hello and thanks for visiting my channel. This video is going to be about the Chiron return for the United States and what the pattern has been in the past as it's unfolded and its association with tornado outbreaks, specifically the 1974 tornado outbreak, the 1925 tri-state tornado, and previous to that there have been other outbreaks that have included multiple F4 tornadoes, etc. So let's dive right in. Okay, so the 1974 super outbreak was the last time that Chiron made its return. This was about 50 years ago. This happened on April 3rd, and as a part of this outbreak, there were 7 F5 tornadoes, another 23 F4 tornadoes, for a total of 30 violent tornadoes. The 7 F5 tornadoes is a record for any given outbreak. In addition, there were another 34 F3 tornadoes as well. And the total for this outbreak, F0 to F5, was 148 tornadoes. Okay, so this is the event chart for the first F5 tornado to touch down as a part of the 1974 super outbreak. This touched down at 3:20 p.m. and it really impacted DePaul, Indiana. So the Chiron return here, we can see that natal Chiron is at 20 Aries 07 minutes. Then transiting Chiron is at 19 Aries and 57 minutes. So this is coming up on the conjunction. It's just 10 minutes from being exact. That's really close. A couple of other things to look at here. We have transiting Jupiter at 5 degrees Pisces. We have transiting Pluto at 5 degrees Libra. These two are making a quincunx together. And then both of these are hitting natal Jupiter at 5 degrees Cancer, with transiting Jupiter making the trine and transiting Pluto making a square. That's significant because Jupiter happens to be the planet that rules over severe weather and tornadoes in general. Okay, so this is United States natal chart again, and this time I have some additional information over here. This represents the longitude, the travel, and the declination for each of the planets in the natal chart. And what I'd like to focus on here is declination. So what is declination? It's a measure of how far above or below the Earth's equator a planet is in any given chart. So for example, Chiron here has a declination of 9 degrees 4 minutes north, or above the equator. That means that if you were living in a city that was exactly at 9 degrees north latitude, that you would see Chiron directly overhead. So that's declination. Now, there are two aspects that can be made via declination. That would happen if you have, for example, you can see in the natal chart for the United States, Venus has a natal declination of 23 degrees north above the equator, whereas Mars is also 23 degrees north. So these two are at the same declination. That would mean that they are parallel. In addition, you can see here that Pluto is 23 degrees below the Earth's equator. And so this would be the contraparallel. And Pluto is contraparallel both Venus and Mars, while Venus and Mars are parallel each other. And the parallel acts as a conjunction, whereas the contraparallel, when the polarity is opposite, one is above the equator, the other is below, is acting like an opposition. The previous Chiron return to the 1974 super outbreak was the tri-state tornado outbreak of March 18th, 1925. This was a very significant outbreak. It was the deadliest outbreak in recorded history. At least 750 people died. A couple of things that are significant. This is still rated, I believe, as the longest tracking tornado in history. Some other things is that this tornado didn't look like a tornado. This is one of the reasons why it was so deadly, is that farmers didn't recognize what they saw as being a tornado. It was just so massive. It just looked like this black dust cloud coming their way. And so they didn't know what to make of it. And before they knew it, the tornado was on them and there was nothing to do at that point in time. Here's the event chart for the tri-state tornado of 1925. Again, the transits are on the outside. The United States natal chart is on the inside. Note here that transiting Chiron is not exactly conjunct natal Chiron. It's about 2.5 degrees off. That's because this particular Chiron return was via declination rather than longitude. So let's go in and look, and we can see that transiting Chiron was parallel natal Chiron with an orb of just 12 minutes. We can go and see that here. We can see that again, the declination for natal Chiron is 9 degrees 4 minutes. Then scrolling down, we can see transiting Chiron is at 9 degrees 16 minutes. The Chiron return that happened previous to the 1925 tri-state tornado was the March 20th, 1875 southeast tornado outbreak. This happened chiefly in Georgia and South Carolina. There were no F5 tornadoes in this Chiron return, but there were 7 F4 tornadoes that killed 96 people. So going back 50 years from the 1875 Chiron return takes us to the very first Chiron return. But that would have happened in March of 1826 or thereabouts. There are some reports in Alabama of a tornado that hit several plantations during that time frame, but there's just really no records to indicate that there was an outbreak of any kind. And so I'm not really going to report on that particular Chiron return. Also, this was before enough people had moved out to the Midwest in Tornado Alley area, Texas, Oklahoma. This was just right after the Louisiana Purchase. And so there were a few people out there, but it was very sparsely populated. There's one other Chiron return that I want to cover. Now, this is not via transit. This is actually a secondary progressed Chiron return. This happened on August 25th of 1814. It was actually part of the War of 1812. The British had advanced on Washington, D.C. They were lighting fire to several different buildings. I believe the main buildings they were after were those associated with the government itself. And it was during this time that a tornado came in and really scared the British. They'd never seen a tornado before, not like this at least. And this tornado killed at least 30 British troops. They were so terrified of what was going on that they got back in their ship and sailed out into the harbor, stayed there for a little bit, and eventually just left. And so this tornado, in a sense, saved Washington, D.C. Here's the event chart for the August 25th, 1814 tornado that was a part of the secondary progressed Chiron return. So again, the natal chart for the United States is on the inside, and around the outside here, I have the secondary progressions. And note here that secondary progressed Chiron is at 20 degrees 7 minutes Aries, the same exact position as natal Chiron. The difference here, though, is that natal Chiron is direct, whereas secondary progressed Chiron is retrograde. Now, this is how a Chiron return can happen in the secondary progressed chart, is that natal Chiron was moving direct, and via secondary progression, it moves forward to some point where it stations, turns retrograde, and then comes back. And then it took until 1814, from 1776, for that to happen and for retrograde secondary progressed Chiron to come back exactly at its natal position once again. And this is a Chiron return. And if we go in and look, we can actually see the exact details of this. Again, natal Chiron here, we can actually get down into the seconds, was at 20 degrees 7 minutes and 24 seconds, whereas the secondary progressed Chiron was 27 minutes and 43 seconds. And so the orb on this was just around 20 seconds, I would say, thereabouts. And so the orb for secondary progression is really, really tight. We're talking less than 1 minute. So it's been 50 years since the last Chiron return. the 1974 super outbreak, and we are due a Chiron return again. Transiting Chiron right now is at 19 degrees 20 minutes Aries. It's less than 1 degree out from natal Chiron at 20 degrees 7 minutes Aries. The aspect will be exact on February 18th. After that, there will be one more transit, a Chiron return via declination that'll be exact on March 15th. So it is very likely that we're going to see another Chiron return event over the next 2 months. When a Chiron return hits, it's going to release whatever secondary progressed aspects happen to be active at that time. This explains the variability that there is between the various different Chiron returns. From the 1875 Chiron return, where there were 7 F4 tornadoes, to the 1974 Chiron returns, where there were 7 F5 tornadoes. So the variability there is based upon the secondary progressed aspects that are active. Right now, there are 3 separate secondary progressed aspects that are active. The first one has to do with what has been driving the sheer number of tornadoes in 2024. Oklahoma saw more tornadoes than in any other year. The second secondary progressed aspect that's active right now has to do with what has been driving the wildfires in California, the LA fire specifically. This was a historical event. This stems from a very specific secondary progressed aspect in the United States chart. The third secondary progressed aspect that is active right now is what's been driving the 2025 blizzard, the snow that we saw along the Gulf Coast. Again, this is another historical event. So we're seeing historical weather right now, and we're seeing things that haven't happened in a long time, just in terms of the secondary progressed aspects that are active right now. So when the Chiron return does hit over the next 2 months, it's going to release this secondary progressed energy. And when that happens, it's going to likely spawn, at the very least, a major tornado outbreak. We could see a super outbreak. If there was going to be one, it would be when this Chiron return hits. So please share this video with your friends, get the word out. Also, if you like this video, if you like the job I did here, please like and subscribe. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.